Before we start tonight's episode, Irene, one of the original Kalamazoo gals, is turning 100 this year on January 30th. John Thomas is putting a celebration video together and is asking you to hold a guitar and record a simple 15 to 30 second selfie video wishing her a happy 100th. You can email your clips to this email. Happy birthday, Irene. You're part of history. Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. I received a very interesting email this week that closes the book on a video that I made nearly 4 years ago. What video is that? Zakk Wylde's first Gibson guitar for sale? Feel free to check that out first before you watch this one. But essentially, the story goes 4 years ago. Yeah, can you believe it's been 4 years since I made that video? Man, it just feels like maybe a year or two ago that this happened. This Pelham Blue VSG showed up at the Skydog Guitars on consignment, and they were claiming that this was Zakk Wylde's very first Gibson electric guitar, the one that he played a whole bunch on. So you can see all the wear and tear on this instrument, how the Pelham Blue finish has aged. I mean, a VSG is actually a pretty cool guitar. I do have a few reviews and demos of these out here, but Pelham Blue was a fairly rare color, and part of the ending series of these when they were just doing exotic finishes to kind of help sell these things off. Like, you can even find Silverburst versions of one of these. So in this video, I was just showing you guys the facts, what was presented, but at the end of the day, the asking price on this was kind of crazy. I think the very first time it came up for sale, it was like burst money, I think $181,000, and then it went down to like $100,000. It just kept jumping all over, up and down. And sometimes that happens on consignments. The shop doesn't necessarily have control over the price, but when it went down to $7,500, it sold. And if you read the description, they were saying it was most likely Zakk Wylde's. And it was said around 83, 84 that he purchased it from Zakk, whose real name is Jeff Wieland, if you're curious why it says Jeff. And then he's just kept it all the way since then. So their circumstantial evidence was a yearbook. And unfortunately, that's all we've had for all this time. But I am pleased to announce, it's official. Zakk got his guitar back. Here he is with it on the Vintage Guitar Magazine cover that you can purchase physical copies of, or you can go to Vintage Guitar Magazine's website to purchase a subscription to read it digitally. Because Zakk was interviewed this time and he showed off some of his Les Paul Juniors. He's got a double cut here, a single cut that just happened to have been signed by Les Paul. You can see it right there. He also has an SG, and then hey, this little familiar guy. So this shop was just sending me that email, so I knew that it was actually Zakk's and that they ended up selling it to him. And they wanted to bring that to my attention because not only the magazine cover, but in 2019, there was an interview with Zakk Wylde that was posted about on ultimateguitar.com when he was interviewed by Musicians Institute, which we'll take a look at a snippet of in a second, where he talks about how you should never sell your very first guitar, or in this case, his very first Gibson. Let's listen to that segment now.
Oh, my very first guitar? Actually, I do have my very first Gibson that I learned on. It was a Pelham Blue SG, a Firebrand, and that was like the first one I ever had. So pretty much the bulk of countless hours of running scales were on that guitar. So I have that one. But I mean, you know, I always ask, and it's always a good question because I always ask all my buddies that play guitar. I'm like, oh, do you still have that, you know, that piece of Fender copy or whatever, you had back in the day because you were like a huge Robin Trower fan, or what, my buddy Frank or something like that. He's just like, dude, I ended up finding a guy who I sold it to, and I ended up getting it back. You know what I mean? So like, those are like always great stories, and it doesn't matter if the guitar is the biggest pile of garbage on the planet. It's the fact that the connection that you have with that guitar. You're like, Zakk, I've learned how to play Smoke on the Water on this guitar. You know what I mean? So
that guitar hugs you back.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it has its life of its own, you know what I mean? So, yeah, just your childhood memory guitars, you know what I mean? Yeah, but I definitely have a bunch of them, for sure.
So if this guitar sold in 2018, we've got an interview of him talking about it in 2019, and he still has it here in 2022, it seems very likely that yes, that was his exact guitar, but I was still a little bit skeptical. So let's go back here and look at this. We need to be able to verify that this was the exact guitar. Look right here. You see how the arm wear area has turned yellow and it's kind of worn through right here? Also notice right here by the cutaway, there's a lot of yellowing to the lacquer there because somebody was doing a bunch of high up soloing. This photo also helps illustrate that a little bit better, especially right here. And you can see all the wood grain and everything too. That's interesting. Another thing we could pay attention to is there is a little bit of arm wear area right here where it's down to the bare wood. And then if we go to our magazine cover here, we can see pretty much the exact same thing going on right here. I can't quite make out the bare wood area, but you definitely have the yellowing right here in this contour. Although in the original seller's photos, it's kind of hard to tell about this. And unfortunately, this is the only photo in that magazine article. I was really hoping it would just be a whole write-up about his guitar and how he got it back, because that would be awesome. But no luck on that, because seeing the wear on the back of the neck would have been real easy to ID this one. The speed knobs look aged in about the same way. And hey, take a look at this. This is a top wrap, and it's also top wrapped in this photo. Now granted, anybody can top wrap a Pelham Blue VSG, but with the seller of that one messaging me that, yeah, that's the real deal, I think I can finally accept that that is Zakk's guitar. Now, I hope and pray he didn't have to pay quite $7,500. In the old video, I tell you it's probably worth about $2,500, but that was 2018 market prices. Nowadays, a guitar like this would probably sell between $2,000 to $2,500 because it's got the cool custom finish, and now people know that it's Zakk's first Gibson. They might want it. But the only reason why this particular one would potentially be worth more is because of Zakk's affiliation. So why should Zakk have to pay more because it's his own? That's why he says, do not ever sell your first guitar. And I agree with that full-heartedly, especially if you become famous and you want to get it back, because then you might have to pay a premium. But for all the love and memories that it brings back, hopefully it was worth it for him, and hopefully he got a good deal. So congratulations, Zakk. If there's a little bit more to your story there and you want to jump on for a quick interview on the show, I think that'd be a lot of fun. Because I know I've had fun just following this story vaguely for the past 4 years. So for the rest of this episode, if you're interested in sticking around, I'm going to talk about my first guitars. Because it's been a while, I've actually documented my very first guitar if you want to watch the full review and demo. But essentially how I got into guitar is I used to be a violin player in the orchestra. And my oldest sister, she got into guitar. She learned some chords, enjoyed playing, but then just eventually put the guitar up in a corner and never touched it again. And after playing Guitar Hero, I thought, hey, I could probably learn real guitar, because this little thing had just been sitting in the corner. So I picked it up one day and I just started playing it. My parents wanted to get me some lessons, which in hindsight I probably should have took, but after the first one, I just didn't want my parents spending all that much money to teach me how to play guitar. So I remember learning Iron Man and being like, yeah, I don't need a teacher. If I can play this, like I just felt like I was on top of the world. So this was just some little rinky-dinky XL Stratocaster. These things are really hard to find nowadays. But even today, it's actually a pretty darn good guitar for the price. I think it was like $250 in a set that included an amp. But I can still play that guitar even yet today. The quality is just that good. Now that I've had a bunch of different budget guitars, I would even say it's better than most Donner guitars. But then again, at $250, that's like 2010's money as well. Hopefully it would be, right? Occasionally you can still find one on Reverb, but I'm not seeing any right now. But thankfully, I do still have that guitar at my parents' house. Although I think the amp got its speaker blown out because we were using it for a keyboard or something. So yes, that's right, the big Gibson fanatic actually started on a Stratocaster style shape. However, my next guitar was actually the Epiphone Les Paul Special 2. Now it wasn't exactly like this, but it was pretty close. It was all black, it had the dual humbuckers. Mine said Special 2 on the headstock instead of Les Paul model, but this is what a current day one looks like. Unfortunately, I do not have this guitar anymore. I sold it just to afford some other gear, and even though this guitar had absolutely terrible intonation, like we dropped it off at a guitar tech to be like, hey, can you fix this intonation after we pay him $100, which is pretty much what the cost of the guitar is. It didn't get too much better, but I would like to have that back. An easy way to know that that would be mine is I installed a kill switch on it. I can't remember what color. I think it was a really garbage red one that had a bad static pop every time you used it because I was trying to get Buckethead style riffs in there. But this was the guitar I did all my main learning on. I didn't have that XL Stratocaster for too long. And I think I played that one for about a year or so, but the reason I installed a kill switch on that one is my parents invested in this really nice Epiphone Silverburst Les Paul Custom for me next. And that was a lot of money for us back then. I think there were only 600. I remember feeling guilty walking out of the store with that thing. Because even though I can afford pretty much any guitar I really want now, back then that was definitely not the case. But I remember I wanted to put the kill switch in this guitar, but my mom was like, no, you should not modify that guitar. So we did it in the cheaper one because none of us really knew what we were doing. It was just a family friend who was helping us install that. And in many ways, I'm glad that we did install it on the cheaper guitar. And this is another one of those guitars that I'll never sell. It's currently in a state of disrepair. Every single year-end collection video, you'll normally see it. I think this year was the exception, but I do still have it. Basically, once I really started to get into Norland era Gibson, before I wanted to buy a full-on Les Paul custom, I thought, hey, how about I rip out all the Epiphone electronics, put Gibson Tim Shaw PAFs in here, just convert it into a 70s, 80s custom, because I had all the parts from a studio custom that I had parted out, which unfortunately I only have one photo of, but no, that is not a glare in your screen. Somebody just sanded the finish off of it right there, and I was having a hard time selling it, so I just decided I would part it out. But that was back before studio customs had a huge premium put on them. I mean, here for the Husk, I was only asking $800. But needless to say, that project never got completed, even though I had all that stuff. I was trying to make it work, but it just never did, so that guitar has just sat there. Eventually, I'll make a series out of that one. We'll put some good electronics in it. I'll try my hand at soldering again and restore that back to the glory that it should be, but I put a lot of hours on that one. So those were my two first Les Pauls there, but as far as my first Gibson, it was actually one of these bad boys, a Gibson Les Paul Custom Silverburst. If I remember correctly, it was about $3,600 brand new with tax, and that was in 2012. So little did I know that guitar actually had a Richlight fretboard. I thought it had ebony the entire time. And I honestly didn't like that guitar all that much. It felt too new. It felt very high end. I remember the day I walked into that Guitar Center. I knew I wanted a Silverburst, and unfortunately they didn't have anything in there. So they showed me what they had on their online inventory. They showed me a Studio, which just looked ugly to me because it had a perimeter burst. They showed me some sort of like a standard as well that also had the perimeter burst. And then they showed me the Big Mac Daddy custom shop. And that's when all the Guitar Center guys were, swarming this 18, 19-year-old kid that had just saved up a whole bunch of money and was going to blow it all on this one big purchase. They was all like, oh yeah, I want to come to your house and jam with you if you've got that guitar, hyping it all up. So I ended up making the purchase for the full-on teardrop shape one. I remember going and picking it up. I just never bonded with this guitar. It was not right for me. And that's when I started to get into vintage guitars. So I ended up selling that thing off at a loss. I remember being late for work that day because I'd finally found somebody on eBay who wanted to purchase it. I think I only sold it for like $2,800. And it was at that point when I was like, no, I hate new guitars. They do depreciate, but we're in a very different market right now. That's why you always buy limited editions. And then from there, I kind of fell into the Norland era of guitars, the whole 25th, 50th anniversary Les Paul, after looking for just a regular Tobacco Sunburst custom and not being able to find it. But the rest of those stories are for another day. So I want to know about your first guitar. Do you still have it? What was special? Is it garbage? What modifications have you done to it over the years? And if not your first guitar, maybe just talk about your first Gibson. It'll be nice reading through those stories. So congratulations, Zakk. I'm glad you got your first Gibson back. And thank you, Troglodytes, for tuning into tonight's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.